Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Everyday Office, the podcast at the intersection of technology and business. I'm one of your hosts, Neil Malek. I am president at Knack Training, a software and consulting business focused on Microsoft software. And joining me, as always, is the wonderful Denise Morris. Hi, Denise.
Hi, yes, I'm so happy. I am now co-host status, so let's get into this.
Yeah, that's what they call
Today,
second chair, right? Sorry. I'm interrupting already. I'm sorry.
let's give the people what they want. They want to hear us talk like that. Today's episode is part of our series we're working on, which delves into tool overload, working in that Microsoft 365 ecosystem. And today we're going to specifically talk about information management inside of Microsoft 365 apps. If you missed our last episode, that was talking about the comparison with file management with OneDrive, Teams, SharePoint. If you missed it, you might want to go have a listen to it. So this episode is going to cover information management, and we're going to look at things like lists, Loop, OneNote, things that fall under that information management system. But as always, we're going to go ahead and start off with some news and announcements in the tech world. I'm going to go ahead and share mine. If you love to use your desktop Teams, as I do, if you're still using classic desktop, they're going to want you to go ahead and switch over to new desktop because they're going to stop allowing you to use it come July 1st, 2025. Change is hard, but I believe in you. You can do it.
I mean, new teams way better than old teams. It's fine. Move on with your life. Holding
Yeah.
on to old software will only result in heartache and hacks. That's they stop supporting the software, the hackers start finding vulnerabilities, and you're totally hosed. Not great. So move
Mm-mm.
on. We can do it. All right. And my news and announcements. I was going to do this in the last episode because I had just seen it as of like the night before. But Microsoft Copilot now has Copilot Actions. Very fancy. No, the basic premise here, just big picture it for you, everybody, first is, anytime you talk about AI, within any organization, they are going to often either conflate it with or try to merge it with automation. So for the longest time, the only way to automate anything in Microsoft 365 was through Power Automate. And Power Automate can use the AI models and AI prompts and things like that, but you're really going through Power Automate to make that happen. But Microsoft understands that we want the AI to do things for us automatically. That's sort of like an important direction to go down. And so that's what Copilot Actions are. When you get it, it'll be if you go to m365.cloud.microsoft and you look down the left-hand bar over there, you'll see a button that says Actions on. It's got a little sparkle on it. And it's got a few categories, and really all you can do is choose from, I think it's like a dozen different templated actions at this point. I'm sure it's going to expand plenty over the next 6 to 12 months. But you can basically have it go through the stuff that's going on in your world and then send you messages about that. So right now, the two actions I have set up are for summarizing all of the chat messages that I receive from specific people in my organization. So, you're chatting all day, every day. Things are going back and forth, and you're losing track of what you're being asked. And so basically, once a week, I'm having it go through all the chat messages Denise sends me and tell me about all the unnecessary garbage that she's talking to me about all day. It's like, oh, there was cows on the highway and all sorts of cool stuff, uh, but also valuable stuff. Denise also chats with me about valuable, important stuff, deadlines, all sorts of useful stuff there. Denise, have you tried it out yet?
I have not, but I plan on doing it today.
Yeah.
So
Because, I mean, you want summaries of everything I send to you and all the very useful and important stuff that I talk about during any given day. It's super
very useful.
valuable.
It's
Yeah.
helpful. And there were cows on the highway. If you can't tell, I live in Texas. So there we go. That should sum it up right there.
Cows on the highway. But the message that a co-pilot sent me was that the cows have been captured and taken off of the
There
highway.
you
And
go.
it's
They didn't
like,
want the rodeo to end.
thanks for that summary. But at the bottom, it does say, hey, here are any action items, right? So, like, if we were talking randomly about 4 or 5 different clients and I missed a request or something like that, super helpful. So, definitely try out Copilot Actions. It's a cool, nice little feature there. All right, let's head into our tech tips. Denise, you want to take the first tech tip here?
Sure. So mine is in Excel, where so many of us spend a lot of our time. If you've ever selected data and in like the bottom right corner, it almost looks like a little chart pops up. And that's because it's giving you access to the quick analysis tool. And the quick analysis tool, other than being difficult to say fast, is a way that you can select data, whether with your mouse or using the shortcut Control Q. Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
It's it's underlined as a as an error, but it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can either select your data with your mouse or you can use the shortcut Control Q, and then it allows you to use charts in various conditional formats that are happening right there. And you don't have to go to the ribbon. You can just click on the little box that appears, and then you can make a chart or graph out of your data that you have selected. So
Yeah.
quick and easy.
Hmm. Absolutely. One of those little things is like, I don't know if you've ever tried to do a running total. Like running total, okay, the first entry is this, then the second entry is this plus this, and then the third entry is this plus this plus this. And you have to actually think about it, right? I mean, it takes an extra 5 seconds, a little bit of brain power to figure out how to do a running total. But one of the quick analysis tools is running total. So you just push the button and it goes, oh, here's your running total. And it calculates it all out for you. And you never had to think about it in the first place. So, anytime you can not think about your spreadsheet, you got to go for that.
Right. That's what we're all hoping for one day.
Yep.
So not think about it.
Yeah. That's why Copilot's so useful. You just have a whole job where it's just talking to Copilot all day. You don't even need humans in your life. And, that is not the direction. Anyway, my tech tip, it's a tiny one. It has existed for a very, very long time, but I still find it useful to this day. Here's how it goes. So let's say that you are delivering a really important presentation. There's some important clients or executives in front of you, and you plug into the screen of some kind, right? Now you have an option when you plug into that screen. You can go have your PowerPoint file open, potentially have everybody see what your first 5 or 10 slides look like, show any notes that you might have, etc. Just not great, right? If you have clients in front of you, you want to impress somebody, you want to be a little bit more slick about it. What I want you to try out is this. Go to the PowerPoint slides that you want to show and just right click on them. And when you right click on them, on that right click menu, one of the options is show. And what it does is it jumps directly into the presentation. It doesn't open the file and then force you to push the show button. It just immediately shows the presentation. And then if you hit escape, it's like it was never open in the first place. It just goes away. So it's a little bit more slick, a little bit more professional when you want to have scenarios where you're trying to, impress somebody. So give it a shot. All right. The main body of this podcast, everybody, is information management. So let me start by saying, what the heck is information management? Why am I separating this out? So I think we can all understand file management, whether it's a Word, Excel, PowerPoint, a PDF, whatever. You're working on that file and you're making sure that that file goes to the right people, that it has access from the right people, stuff like that. But what about everything to do with your work that's not an actual file? So some of the things that might qualify there are things like a contact list or a calendar, right? Upcoming events, tasks, people's information, tracking invoices, notes from your meetings, all that little stuff, right? That's all information about your world, but it's not really a file that you have to worry about. And so I separate that out because lists, for example, spreadsheets full of data, OneNote notebooks full of information, or loop components full of information, each one of these is a little different than your real file management concept. And so Denise and I are going to break down two major areas of that. And the first area that I'm going to work on is lists of data, right? So this can be task lists, it can be lists of events that are coming up, it could be lists of people who are connected to the project, just about anything under the sun. And most of us, I think, use spreadsheets for that. I mean, it's one of those jokes that all the nerdy kids out there keep spreadsheets about literally everything, right? You can keep a spreadsheet about what food you eat and how many exercises you do and literally everything in your entire life. And so it makes sense that if you have upcoming events, if you have registrations for something, if you have vendors or clients or anything else that we can possibly think of, most people are just going to drop it in a spreadsheet. So I want to talk to you about Microsoft Lists. Microsoft Lists, it's been around actually about since the dawn of time. So since SharePoint was invented, we had two concepts. One concept was the library, that's for holding on to files, and the other concept was the list for holding on to information or records. And so a list has always been the online equivalent of a spreadsheet. But for a long time, people weren't using it. And then somewhere around the mid 2000s, 2010s, people started using products like Smartsheet and Asana and Trello and Airtable came out and all of these other tools that are effectively they're online spreadsheets. That's what they are, right? Think about an Airtable right now. Or if you haven't tried them out, my wife swears by Airtable. She loves Airtable almost as much as she loves me. So you go online and you are able to store information about things that need to happen, projects that are ongoing, stuff like that. And what's nice is that you can have color coding, you can filter things down, you can set up workflows based on that information. So when an event is coming up, you can trigger a workflow that sends notifications out, stuff like that. And a lot of people think that lists isn't really, or I don't even know that lists exist, to be perfectly frank. But now Microsoft kind of rebooted the list concept. They retitled it Microsoft Lists. You can actually have your own personal lists, which is super helpful. And ultimately, everybody, if you've got a table of data in Excel, right now you could go over to a SharePoint site or to your Microsoft Lists app and say, hey, I'd like to upload this Excel file and turn it into a list. And then you have drop down menus and color coding and all sorts of really great stuff. And I would highly recommend that you do that because ultimately, everybody, a spreadsheet is a desktop file. It's not in the same way engaged with everything that's going on in the cloud. Whereas a list from Microsoft Lists is a lot easier to connect to workflows, to tasks, and all sorts of different things. So converting a basic spreadsheet into an online list, I think makes a ton of sense. Couple of quick notes about those lists. I've already talked about the fact that when you use lists, you can have drop-down menus that have color associated with them, so you can color code the things that you're working on. You can also create a bunch of different filtered and sorted views of those lists so that somebody can pull up all the overdue items, or they can pull up all of one category of something, or they can pull up all the vendors who are in the state of Florida, or whatever it is that they need really, really easily. And for a long time, if you wanted to have a nice form that somebody would fill out so that then that information would be saved, you would have to go over to Microsoft Forms. But these days, if you go to the list that you're working on, up at the top, there's a button for forms, and there's this new tool called a list form, and you can make a form that you give access to whatever group of people you want. You can embed it on a SharePoint page or in a team, and people will fill out that form, and the data will automatically go into the list. So it's very, very dynamic and interesting to use that to collect information. And the last point I want to make here, the one thing that a lot of people have pushback with that about is they go, yeah, but I really would like to be able to send a spreadsheet around with the details, or maybe even make a pivot table from the details of what's going on. And what's really easy here, everybody, is you can actually go to the top bar of your list and you can export it to an Excel spreadsheet and then build a report off of that. And it's actually querying the data that's in that list. So now there's basically no reason not to use a list. It's connected back to an Excel file. You can build a pivot table off of it. You can share that data with anybody. You have a form people can fill out to put data into that list. You can connect it to automations. Microsoft lists are a very, very useful and dynamic tool. And I just talked for like 5 solid minutes there. So, any thoughts about the beauty and wonder of the list, Denise?
I mean, I feel like spreadsheets are what people know. So
Mm-hmm.
change is hard, like we were discussing, but we currently use lists for lots of things where we can hook it up to Power Automate, where it allows, other people to be scheduling things based off of that list. And think about like social media content where you can plug in, the link for it, and then somebody else can post it for you based off of all of that information being in one place. So nothing wrong with spreadsheets. We
Yeah.
teach so many Excel classes all the time, but lists are different. They're new. It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
like what our next section is going to be about, OneNote versus Loop. Like they're very similar, but maybe one could be a little bit better than the other one. So
I don't know. And everybody, just so you're aware, Denise is talking about something that we were talking about literally moments before we started recording this podcast. We are actively using lists to schedule social media content as we speak. So definitely, definitely is central to all sorts of different workflows that we have going on internally. All right, it is time. The Royal Rumble, as it were. OneNote versus Loop. Let's hear
Oh,
it, Denise.
yes. OneNote. OneNote. So he says that because he loves OneNote. He, as in, my
This guy.
wonderful boss and co-host right here. And OneNote is amazing. If you've never had one of our trainings on it, like there's so many pieces to it that I just don't think people know how to use, or, they just were never taught how. But Loop is different. I'm not saying it should replace OneNote in any way, shape, or form, but it kind of feels like Microsoft was going that direction because they have a lot of similarities in the way they look, in the way that you can store data and all of that, but they're also different. So let's talk about that. OneNote and Loop, let's look first at like structure versus flexibility. If you look at a OneNote notebook compared to a Loop workspace, they look very similar. They have that, that white space there, your ability to add pages and subpages on both of them, and you can search throughout them. But OneNote is more structured. It has the note taking in the notebooks. It's really great for documentation, for long-term documentation. If you're working on a very large project that could span years, this is a good place to store your data. Loop, you can also take notes there. but it's more modular. Like you can add the components in there. It's not just straight text going down the page. You don't really even have the ability to go further across the page like you do on a OneNote notebook, which if you're printing things, my boss would say, don't do that. Stay like you're going in a portrait mode.
Hmm.
And we know that Loop can be embedded in Teams, Outlook, Whiteboard, other apps that can be used. Now, OneNote is found in some of those areas too. There's a OneNote notebook attached to your team. You can save emails to OneNote. Like they're living in the same space together. Almost like OneDrive and SharePoint. I don't know if they're necessarily competing with each other. They're just two apps that are very similar because Microsoft loves to do that. Why not make two apps that are so similar?
Hey, you got to solve all the problems. And sometimes to solve a problem, you have to make another app that feels like it does the same thing as the other app, but has a different purpose for some reason.
Right. So in the realm of structure versus flexibility, I would say you're going to want to use OneNote if really need an organized knowledge base with detailed notes. Best practice at Knack, we have OneNote notebooks for clients. And so everything that we do with that client is placed in that OneNote notebook. From what we talk about in a discovery call to what we plan for sessions and all of that's there. So it's easy to locate. If you want to use Loop, for the flexibility of being able to collaborate in a workspace with others, constantly evolving the content.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the things that makes me think of is to your point about the printing thing, right? So when I first got into using OneNote, when you open OneNote, it's an infinite canvas. It goes all the way down the page for as long as you can imagine, and all the way to the right for as long as you can imagine. But then somebody asked the question during one of my classes, what happens if I want to make a PDF of this? Or what happens if I want to put it into a Word doc? And so I looked at that and I went, oh, yeah, look at that. It makes total sense that you would have a OneNote notebook, and then at the end of something, you would want to then sort of lock that in, turn it into a PDF, and send that PDF to a client, or package the PDF a PDF up. PDF. That's what's a PDF? What? Package that PDF up and make it the long-term training guide or something like that, right? And so if you go into OneNote, what you're basically allowing for is documentation that could stretch for a really long time, be very, very dynamic and flexible, but ultimately it's saved. Like imagine a three-ring binder that's in your life right now that's got recipes in it or details to a trip or anything along those lines. It's sort of locked in, and that's your long-term storage for that thing. And so that feels right to me for that purpose. Like Denise said, basically every class that we teach, we have all of our notes about how the class starts and what kinds of exercises we do and stuff like that in OneNote notebooks, in pages. And you can then have subpages with, well, what if somebody wanted to see an exercise that was like this, or those sorts of things. Whereas Loop is all about those components, right? And being able to take a small snippet of something and share it with a few people and then have that snippet play itself out back in the Loop workspace or those sorts of things. So even though they both are ostensibly for keeping track of stuff and taking notes and things like that, I do feel like they have different goals, right? In
Mhm.
that way.
Yeah. I would almost say OneNote's like for like deep note taking. Like
Mm,
it's very thorough, and Loop is more of like quick input sharing. It can still be stored there, but it's more of like a constantly evolving. I mean, when you look at OneNote, the notes are static, right? The content is static until somebody goes in and updates it. but you can't allow others to work in your notebook. That is one good thing about Loop is when you share a notebook with OneNote, you share the whole thing with somebody.
Yeah.
With Loop, you can share just a page or you can share the entire workspace. So it does have that flexibility there. And then we know with Loop, the content is updating in real time, meaning, people are using it, they're interacting, you're seeing the changes as they come through. We know all too well that when we are working in OneNote, sometimes it's not in real time collaboration. We'll be like, "Are you typing? I'm typing something." It's like, I see nothing. So it's like, it's just a little slower, which is fine.
Yeah, the syncing may not be quite up to our preferred standards. Yeah, it's not. I mean, basically, OneNote is like the fourth banana to Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, right? If you go into Word, Excel, or PowerPoint and you're sharing that file with somebody else, you pretty much see those edits in real time. But in OneNote, you kind of go, are you even paying attention right now, OneNote? You have to like give it a nudge and say, hey, 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 come on. There might be some updates out there. Let's go look. But yeah, to your point too, one of the things you can do is you can take a OneNote notebook, save that as a file to a hard drive someplace and take it somewhere. It's a package, it's shared as a package with the folks. Whereas with Loop, everything's online all the time. And to your point, like imagine that you are trying to prepare for a meeting, right? And you want a bunch of people to contribute agenda items to that meeting. If you give them access to a page in OneNote to add their agenda items, they not only have access to the entire page, but also now the entire notebook, which is kind of a lot. But I can not only with Loop give them access to the information for one meeting and one meeting alone, but literally just one of the components from that meeting agenda. They might not even have access to the 45 other things that are happening in that meeting agenda, but just the little component where I'm asking them, please contribute your action items. So that modular approach could be really a lot more dynamic and useful for people.
Yeah. And you say agenda, and I think that is probably the best component that Loop has is when you go to create a meeting in Teams, the agenda is at the very bottom. If you click it, it'll open into the actual component. The component renames itself whatever the meeting is named. And like Neil's saying, you can go ahead and put an agenda in there because agendas for meetings are a good best practice. Where are we going? What's happening with this meeting? And then if you're like, well, they don't ever check that. Well, you can just copy that component and you can email it to them. You could put it in the Teams channel, like, hello, this is our agenda. Fill it out. Please, please fill it out. And those people are like, I didn't see it. You did see it because I sent it to you three different ways. But yeah, I think that's like the best component of all of the Loop components personally. Which brings us into that integration, right? OneNote has been around. It integrates with quite a few it works really well in the Office ecosystem, but it doesn't have that real-time syncing across the multiple apps as fast as Loop does, or if you're not, actually updating your content. And we know that Loop is integrated with Teams, Outlook, Whiteboard, and OneNote, and Planner. We can put a planner in a Loop, excuse me. And eventually it's coming to Word Online. I check
Mhm.
almost every day and it's
Yeah.
never there. Just like the tab in Teams, it's never there. But so
Yeah, sometime this year they have got to come out with the tab for Teams, right? That's a must have. And then I hope at some point their goal it has to be for Loop components to actually work in Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. Because that would make, to your point, like, I'm totally in agreement here, everybody. The meeting agenda is a no-brainer. Like, this is the best component that's out there because every meeting that you have should have an agenda and people should be able to contribute to that. Totally makes sense. But there are these other Loop components for things like paragraphs, bulleted lists, tables. And you know what else has tables? golly gee willikers, Word, Excel, and PowerPoint have tables, right? So wouldn't it be fantastic if you could give somebody a loop component that had a table in it that then dynamically updated an Excel spreadsheet and the PowerPoint presentation that was the report off of that Excel spreadsheet? Wouldn't that be awesome? I think that would be amazing. So if they can finally get that to work, because I've told this to people, like I'm pretty sure it was pre-COVID that Microsoft announced that they were doing this new thing called the Fluid Framework, and that they were going to be these little components that you worked on that then would work with all the different desktop apps and stuff like that. And it legitimately went for years without me hearing anything after that announcement. And I always thought it was just dead. And now all of a sudden Loop actually does exist. And it is awesome, but it is still probably, I don't know, it's probably only 15 or 20% of what I would want it to be, right? I
Hmm.
actually want it to work like that cool announcement video that they came out with a long time ago, and they're not there yet. So,
No. When you watch that video, I'm like, that can't happen. That doesn't do that. It's like when you watch a Copilot video and it's like, look at this presentation I made. I'm like, you did not make that. That is not a real presentation that Copilot made.
again, everybody, I'll say this directly into the mic. I go to conferences all the time, and one of the first things I will say at those conferences is, I do not get paid by the Microsoft Corporation. I teach a ton of Microsoft products. I love Microsoft software, and I use nothing but PCs in my real world life. I would not, Macs are just not for me. But we're going to be honest with ourselves about where things stand right now. And right now, I would not, I'm just going to say this as cleanly and directly as possible. I would not make a presentation using Microsoft Copilot.
No.
It's just not there. It's like, oh, cool. You put random numbers and images onto slides that have no coherent processing behind them. It's like, you go on LinkedIn and you see all those people are like, never make a presentation again. Use AI to make your
Yeah.
presentation. I'm like,
PowerPoint's dead. No,
I,
it's not.
it's not dead. Like,
It will come back from the dead and be like, look at this transition. That's what it's gonna do.
zombie PowerPoint. Sorry, we have gone. The
Off track.
rails were over here. We
We
were
jumped
over
the
there.
track.
That's
Yeah.
terrible. Um, but all that is to say, looping back to loop. Oh, I didn't mean
Oh,
to do that, but I did it.
you
Um,
did it. It's out there.
I am really excited about Loop, but I definitely see, like I said, it's probably 20% of what it could potentially be at some point in the future, and I would love to see it reach that potential.
Yeah.
And I still think we're using OneNote for a long time. All of those class materials and stuff like that. It doesn't really fit with what Loop is trying to do. So, you're trying to make a knowledge base of some kind. I think it's still OneNote every day. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. You know,
I
I'm
would
a,
I would I would say that, for personal use, working with OneNote, it's great for like that details research or keeping yourself on track or your thoughts even. But for that live collaboration piece, like agile teamwork, real-time updates, Loop is where it's at the moment. So
all right. All right. So, everybody, you've heard us yap. What are we telling you to do? I am telling you that a whole bunch of your Excel spreadsheets should be lists. Matter of fact. In addition to that, Microsoft just recently changed the way that you even make lists in Microsoft Lists. If you go to make a new list, I want you to take a second and notice that they have this option up towards the top that says, okay, you're making a list, yes, but what is your actual goal? Is your actual goal to have a form that then gets saved into the list? Is it to have a board or a calendar or something like that? So check those things out. If you are somebody like me I used to use Trello a lot. Now I use Planner a lot. There's the ability to make a Kanban board type list really easily. There's the ability to make a calendar-like list really easily. And of course, like I said, you can upload an Excel spreadsheet and convert that into a list. And your ability to customize that and integrate it into all the Microsoft 365 tools is definitely worth the effort. Denise, what are you telling people to do?
I'm telling them to try some loop components. Try that meeting agenda. Neil mentioned paragraph. Imagine having, somebody needs to approve something in this 20-page document, and instead of sending them a 20-page document, you send them the paragraph of that they need to look at in their team's message. Bam. Inside of an email, no more emailing back and forth because once you are entering into that loop component, it's being updated in real time. You see it happening. Um, so try one out, see how it works out. Just even if you just use like the task list for yourself in the portion of your teams, right? Because if you give yourself a task, you can assign it to your to do or your own personal tasks for your planner. So it's out there, it's
Yeah,
waiting to be used. Use it, please
absolutely.
use it.
Excellent. All right. Thank you so much for your time, everybody. Thank you, Denise, for joining me yet again on a wonderful
Thank you for
episode of
having
this
me. Yeah.
podcast. Oh, makes me so happy. All right, everybody. Have a lovely rest of your week and throw some loop components into chat messages. You won't regret it. It's going to be amazing.